we articulated our opposition to being brought to Israel. I pointed out to them that we wanted to go to Gaza, that we did not want to get off in Israel, and when the boat docked, we linked arms and we refused to leave the boat. We were all taken off individually by force. I was grabbed by 4 commandos and wrestled away from everybody else, dragged across the cabin and out the door, all the time protesting that I did not want to leave the boat and I did not want to enter Israel and that they were kidnappers. On the dock, I was handed over to 2 policemen. In front of us were a couple of hundred naval and military personnel clearly off duty who, I mean, God knows what the purpose of it was. Maybe they were just asked to fill the place up for I don't know what the reason for it was, but they stood there with their cameras and their video cameras taking footage and photographs of us as we were brought off. I can only recall my own personal experience of this, although I did see other people being brought off the boat. Ava, actually, a Polish-British Free Gaza activist, I saw her in the detention centre, and she actually refused she just played dead and refused to assist them in any sense. So I saw her levitating through the processing area because they had to lift her all the way from the boat with her legs up under her and into the processing area and lift her from one desk to another. Anyway, with regard to myself, I was brought into the processing area and confronted by these people from, I don't know, immigration, Mossad, take your pick, who asked me to present my passport. I refused. My passport was in my top pocket here, but I refused, as I had done on the boat, I refused repeatedly to give them my passport on the basis that I was under no obligation to cooperate with kidnappers. I pointed this out to them again within the processing area. I said that I had been kidnapped in international waters by armed men, brought to a country that I did not want to go to. I felt under no obligation to cooperate with them, and I wouldn't be cooperating with them. I wouldn't sign anything. I wouldn't answer their questions. And that was the attitude I would be taking. So I was grabbed by 2 security men. I had my arm twisted high behind my back, which hurt considerably. They then removed the passport from my pocket. I continued to refuse to cooperate, and I was brought through, I don't know, 5 or 6 different desks where I was asked various questions, and I refused to sign anything or answer their questions. The most surreal moment, I think, has to be when they told me that I was going to be charged with illegally entering Israel, and that the penalty for this was deportation. At that moment, I came very close to describing them or calling them half-wits, but I was intent on remaining calm, and I apart from a laugh, I pointed out that that the contrary was true, that in fact I'd been illegally kidnapped and brought to Israel against my will by force. I refused to sign the deportation form, and the consequence of that was, with everybody else, with the others, I was brought to a prison in Beersheba in southern Israel. And we were denied contact with the outside world. We weren't allowed contact with our embassies. We weren't allowed phone calls. And it's quite clear that eventually the consular assistance that we received only happened because of the international outcry. We had some inkling at that stage of what had happened on the Turkish ship, because a soldier had said to Ava in the processing centre that they were dead on the ship. And obviously people were, it was shocking. I mean, shocking, but as I said, not surprising because of the force they used. As the wing began to fill up with prisoners from the other ships, we got more stories, and we saw some of the injuries from the Turkish ship and from other ships. People were badly beaten on a number of the ships, on the Greek ship, for instance, as well. One gentleman from the Turkish ship lifted his T-shirt and showed me a bite mark on his stomach where he'd been savagely bitten by an Israeli dog. Other people had head wounds. There were stories of dead bodies on the deck with bullet holes in their forehead. It was clearly hell on that Turkish ship. There's no question about that. So I think we were sombre because of that, but we were also more determined. Within the prison, we did not accept the authority of the prison officers. Repeatedly told them that we just refused to cooperate with them, and told them that we considered ourselves to be political prisoners and kidnap victims. In fact, there was a committee set up to represent the prisoners. I was on that committee, which didn't last too long because we were only in there 2.5 days, I think, really, in the prison. We put a set of demands. The first demand was access to to embassy officials, and that happened the following day. So we weren't cooperative in any sense at all, and I think we were right not to be. Eventually, we were brought to when international pressure forced them to release us. We were brought to the airport, and there was an air of menace in the airport. I myself wasn't assaulted at the airport, but other people were. We were on the ground, on the tarmac, for maybe 10, 12 hours while there was a standoff. Turkish Airways and the Turkish government refused to allow the planes to take off until everybody was released and until everybody was on the planes, which was the correct attitude to take. After a while, people began to come on the plane with what looked like broken fingers, black eyes, etc., etc. And it's clear that they had begun to assault people in the airport terminal. Fikra, who's over here, was assaulted by the military inside there. I think between 10 and 20 personnel jumped on him and gave him a savage beating. Ken O'Keefe, another Irish passport holder, was given a bad beating. Several others were badly beaten, and I was told by one of the women from our ship that they were backslapping people as they were going up the staircase inside, and she was hit as she was going up. They basically were giving them hard slaps in the back of the head. So they were intent on underlining the Israeli hospitality, and they're unwelcome for us. But I have to say, once we were on the Turkish plane, we felt that ultimately we were safe and we would leave. Now, the deaths of those 9 Turkish people is a tragedy, and I don't think in any way we can describe what happened as a success. It wasn't a success. It was a tragedy. It was a tragedy that will have good results, I think. It may be a game changer if we ensure that it's a game changer. The international media focused on Gaza as a result of what happened. I find elements of it a little bit disturbing, I have to say, because it was right that the world's media focused on the deaths of those 9 brave people, who, by the way, the talk about violence on the Turkish ship, if anybody wants to ask me a question about this afterwards, I'll go into some detail in it, but let me be clear about this. When you're attacked by armed men in international waters, you are entitled to defend yourself. That said, there were no weapons on that ship, as the Israelis described them. There were no guns. There were nothing like that. But people did defend themselves. They disarmed some of the Israelis and threw guns overboard. They in some instances, fought back. I applaud those people. I think any reference to those. So where do we go from here? What I was going to say, by the way, was I'm disturbed by the focus. I'm not disturbed by the focus on the deaths of the Turkish people. I am disturbed, however, by the lack of focus on an ongoing basis on the deaths of Palestinians. There's almost a racism there. There's a sense in which the Palestinians are expected to die. The people of Gaza are expected to suffer, and we've got to ensure that changes. Now, where do we go from here? There are a number of things happening in the near future. We will sail again, and I will be on the next flotilla if at all possible. There was a meeting in Istanbul on Wednesday by those who were involved in organising the last flotilla. The intention is to get something going within the next number of weeks, possibly September. It's not clear when yet. But there will be another, and hopefully a much larger flotilla. So this is not going away. The objective to end the siege of Gaza is not a long-term objective, it's not a medium-term objective, it is a short-term objective. the siege of Gaza must be ended soon.